Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Thank you for joining me on today's special BrainScratch update. We have a bit of news stirring around several of the stories that kind of stick out in my mind, particularly from last year, some of the more memorable ones, and some very important updates in some cases, and in other cases, maybe not as much info as we would like for an update, but still worth talking about. So let's go ahead and start with a case that we covered last year, which is the case of Julie Mott. And if you're not familiar with any of these cases, in the description box below, I will have links to the original BrainScratch episodes so you can check them out for yourself. Here at mysanantonio.com, there is some news that is kicking around. Basically, the civil suit has started for this case. And just to give you kind of a brief reminder of what this case is, Julie Mott died at the age of 25, I believe cystic fibrosis, if I remember correctly. They had her funeral and her body disappeared after that. It's a very strange case. A lot of people suspect that her boyfriend might have something to do with it. But there certainly seems to be some level of responsibility, I think, on the funeral home's part, and that is basically what this case is. It's a civil lawsuit where Julie's family is suing the place that was taking care of her services. So let's see what kind of information we can get. They've had a few days of testimony at this point, but this case is very early on, so we might even have another update on this before the end of the month. And we start with the person that has the most ridiculous nickname I've ever heard on the channel, or we've had on the channel so far, Robert Dick Tips. He is being sued in civil court by the family of Julie Mott, 25, who died from cystic fibrosis in August of 2015. Relatives learned her body went missing from a damaged casket the day after her memorial service held at the Cherry Ridge facility. That's another interesting aspect to this case, is the type of damage that the casket had gone through might suggest that someone that didn't know how to open it properly was trying to pry it open. Once again, this might lead us to believe that it was someone not experienced in this industry that had done this. But there's other factors here. You have third-party services. There's essentially a different company that comes in to handle the cremation. Her remains were supposed to be cremated, and that company also has access codes to the building, to the security system, and keys. So just a bit of, when it comes to responsibility, just many, many hands in the jar there. And I don't know from a personal standpoint if I think that this company did everything they could to keep this body secure, but that's just my personal opinion on it. We'll see what the courts think. The body still has not been found. Tips acknowledged that once he heard that the body was missing, he contacted one of his corporate lawyers before he alerted the Motts of the disappearance. Now, that is really grabbing a lot of headlines. People are really kind of gripping on to why the heck would he have called a lawyer first? What I'm curious about is, here we're talking about, yeah, he calls a corporate lawyer and then he calls the family. At what point does he decide to call the authorities and say that there's been a robbery on his property of a person's body? So I'm a little shocked at it myself. I wish I could say it's abnormal, but in many cases I've looked into, people seem to want to protect their own interests before doing the right thing time and time again, and I think this is just another example of that. Tips also acknowledged that the security code to the facility, the last 4 digits of a phone number that hadn't been changed in 20 years, was common knowledge among at least 22 employees, others who used to work there, and third-party contractors Tips used to transport bodies. Specifically, they're talking here about Bayer and Bytel Mortuary Service, who's the company that they think might have come in during the night. They would certainly have access to do that. But from what we know, that's been investigated and they don't have any information on where this body is as well. Using parts of your phone number for a security code, not a great idea, particularly a well-known phone number like that that's been in use for 20 years. Not changing your security codes often when you have employees coming and going, once again, not a good idea. And the main defense so far that it seems like Dick Tips is holding on to is that, well, we've never had a body stolen before. And kind of this, common decency angle. Who would steal a body? Who would do that? I know that in funerals, people wear jewelry. I know there could be expensive items that they're being buried with, or at least are being presented in their casket at the wake. I think that it is a bit irresponsible to take that angle with this conversation. Her body was left essentially in a hallway after their service, which once again, is that the best way to keep a body secured? What if there is someone that noticed, hey, she's got a bit of jewelry on her. I'd really like to have some of that. It seems like common sense is not really being used too well in this business, unfortunately. But once again, that's for courts to decide. Also, the physical keys hadn't been changed in at least 10 years, and they could be copied anywhere. So, sometimes you'll see keys that specifically say do not copy on them. Apparently, these weren't those types of keys. These were keys that you could take down to, your local hardware store and make copies of. Once again, it really seems to me like they could have used a security audit at some point, but it's like they don't want to think about that angle, that they just want to say, well, why would we assume that a body would get stolen? It's never happened in the past. Yeah, but like I said, you've at least got valuables in there that you need to be protecting. Not to mention the person's body is itself valuable, of course, but from a very common sense perspective, at least the jewelry of these people should be protected. And these systems, to me, don't seem to suggest that was really happening. Also presented was a taped conversation between an ADT representative and Mission Park employee, indicating the alarm was not engaged that night and that the company was not paying for the opening and closing of doors to be monitored. Once again, pretty lax security practices we have going on there. They can't even tell if someone came into the building with the service that they're paying ADT for. And outside of that, we're specifically hearing here that the alarm wasn't even turned on that specific night. So we have a lot of problems going on here. Now, I've seen other information on other articles where Dick Tips is specifically saying, no, I know the alarm was on and I know it's working properly. So I don't know which one of those is more accurate. It's kind of tough when you're getting all this through media sources, but let's continue. They also allege that Julie Mott's former boyfriend stole her body because the family told Tips he was obsessed with her and did not want her cremated. So even the defense, even Dick Tips's team is essentially trying to hold on to that story. Wait, this is probably her boyfriend. I don't know what kind of defense that is, because I don't think it's a very strong position. This is really a conversation of, could they have anticipated that there might be some security risk to their business? And in one way, they acknowledge that they do, because they're paying a security company to monitor their site. Even if they're not paying them for the best service, they're paying something. They have a security system installed. They have locks on the doors. There is enough steps that have been taken by their business that I think it's a reasonable assumption that they have a security concern. Now they're trying to say, well, is it enough? Did we cover our bases enough in terms of security? And it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out. The trial is expected to go for at least 3 weeks. And there was also a little information that hit news about it in terms of cameras not being allowed, but now both sides agree that cameras can be allowed in the courtroom. So it seems like press has a little better access. So if you want to keep tabs on this, mysanantonio.com has had pretty good coverage on this story. I'll have a link to this also in the description box below, but you might want to keep maybe a news alert set up or something, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be some interesting turns and developments as this case goes forward. Moving on to our second update, Daniel Nations. And I have to say, so many of you out there are extremely passionate about Daniel Nations and really trying to prove or disprove that he is the Delphi killer. And I am absolutely with you guys. At this point, I'm extremely concerned because I'm not seeing activity or actions on law enforcement's part to make me believe that they can nail this guy. And that is telling me one of a few things. Either it means they don't have the right guy, which is shocking to me considering, and especially even in this photo, he looks a lot more like the composite now that he has a little more weight on his face again. I'm wondering if the composite is of the right person at this point. Is it possible that someone did see him in that area, maybe a few people, and it weirded them out enough, maybe something he had done or something he had said, that they reported that to officers, and officers are kind of assuming that that is the Delphi killer? I'm really shaken up at how much he looks like the composite, and we know he's in the area, but it's not really seeming like they're acting like he is. Now, the other possibility there is perhaps they don't have any DNA evidence from the scene, which would be a really tough position. And they've been very tight-lipped even about what happened to those girls, and they've been very tight-lipped about what evidence they have. So I can't tell you for sure if they do or they don't. But in this particular case, if this is somehow the Delphi killer, they must not have DNA evidence at the scene, and they must be looking for better evidence or different types of physical evidence. I'm really not sure where to go with it at this point, but we do get a little bit of a news update here. Daniel Nations, and this is just as of February 4th, 2018, he was transported back to Indiana to face unrelated charges in Johnson County. Those charges are basically for failure to register as a sex or violent offender while he was staying in that area. But an interesting note in this really short blurb: a source inside Indiana State Police told WTHR.com Sunday that Nations, quote, is not on the radar for the Delphi murders. Now, it's kind of hard. We're getting that that's like third hand at this point. We have someone that told that website, or a news channel, and they're reporting it here. We don't know who that person is. We don't know who their source is inside ISP. Is it a good source? Would they even have that type of knowledge? We really have no idea, but at least in media, we're getting a blip here that they're really not considering him for these murders. So perhaps they do have DNA, perhaps they've ruled him out. But what's interesting there is they haven't officially come out and said, we've excluded him. We do have an official comment from them that happened in October of 2017 saying that he has neither been included nor excluded. So they're willing to comment on him. But if he's really not on the radar, if they've really excluded him, I think it's a disservice to the public that they don't announce that, and to Daniel. I mean, this dude is messed up enough. He's facing all kinds of different things, and I'm sure he totally deserves all of that. But if we've got a lot of people out there thinking he might be a man that murdered these two girls and he isn't, and the police know that, I think it's really their duty to at least make a public comment about that and say that they've excluded him. But we really don't have that at this point. So this is one of the toughest cases from last year. This is one that hangs heavy on my heart, and I can't wait to see some progress with this, if it's with Daniel Nations or not. But something just to me feels really off about this composite, and I'm really wondering if the composite is accurate information at this point. I really don't know. And our final case that we're going to talk about today, another case that a lot of people really want to hear updates on. And of course, it's a little tough because I have to do a lot of Google translating and try to understand what it's saying. But this is the case of Magdalena Zuk. And if you don't remember, this is a woman that went on vacation, started acting strange on her vacation. Her boyfriend couldn't go because his passport expired. We have video clips with a couple of very bizarre phone calls. We have her visiting the hospital on numerous occasions, and then she jumps out of a second-story hospital window, hurts herself very badly, and dies that night. Once again, links are in the description box below if you want to see the full brain scratches on that. I basically have had so many people ask me for an update on this. I just went looking today to see if I could find anything. And this is an article from just a couple weeks ago, so January 11th, 2018. First of all, the main thing people are asking is this investigation still going? And according to this article, yes, absolutely. It is still an ongoing investigation. The second thing people want to know is what has been determined, what has come out of, autopsy information or investigators. Are they making any public comments? We get a little bit of information here. The results of the autopsy did not leave any doubts. The cause of Magda Zuk's death was a fall from a height. The prosecutor's office emphasizes that no evidence was found that the tourist was a victim of a crime. No traces were found that would give rise to assumptions that the deceased had fallen victim to rape or other acts of violence. Now, where I get a little hung up on this story is it's kind of a common sense thing that, yes, we know that the fall is most likely what killed her, but we have so much evidence that something is wrong leading up to that. What could they possibly be looking at with all of that evidence as well? And how can you automatically assume that none of that ties to her jumping out the window when we have her acting so bizarre over a period of time like that? It could be immediately associated to why she jumped out the window. So it does sound like they're looking in that direction a little bit. The district prosecutor's office in Jelenia Gora announced that in the matter of a detailed analysis of the girl's behavior, expert psychiatrists were requested to give their opinion. So they're bringing in behavioral experts. I'm sure they're going to be looking over all the video footage, probably more video footage than we even got to see publicly. And they're going to try to make an assessment on that. There is also some talk that I'm seeing in here of her being on some type of prescription medications, perhaps for dealing with depression. I think they're going to look into possible side effects of those medications, but also, was she taking those medications properly? Did she perhaps forget them at home? Maybe didn't bring them with her and stop them suddenly, which apparently can be very bad depending on the medication. So they've got this conclusion that she did this to herself, that she jumped out the window on her own. Essentially, they're saying they can't find any information to support a story that she was pushed out the window. But if she did do this to herself on her own, they're now trying to dig a little bit deeper, get some behavioral analysts in there, have people look at the medication, and I'm sure information that came out of the autopsy about her toxicology, and see if they can at least put together some type of understanding of what this poor woman was going through leading up to her unfortunately falling out of that window. According to official sources, the investigation is expected to last until May of 2018. So we've still got a ways to go before that one gets concluded as well. I don't know, brain scratchers. I wish that there was better updates on all these cases. It's really one of those things that Christy, my associate producer, and I work really hard to keep up to date on these cases, and to see these little blips of information is sometimes frustrating because I'm like, it's not quite enough. But there's so many of you out there asking that I wanted to kind of at least touch on some of the bigger cases, especially the cases that really struck me that came out of 2017. And these are certainly three near the top of that list. So if there's other cases that you'd like updates on, please let me know it in the comment box below, and let's talk about these updates. Any other information that you're able to determine from these updates, or is there other pieces of info that you're finding that I didn't happen to cover? Let's talk about it in the comments below and share that information with everyone. Thank you so much for joining me on this special BrainScratch update. I appreciate each and every one of you out there that watches, and I hope you have a great day. And I'll see you back here tomorrow on the Lord Narks channel.